Welcome back to the Chosen Life podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan A. Hacohen, author of the Bible 3.0, the 6 Commandments of the Chosen Life, and here today to share his knowledge, wisdom, experience in life and in travels, in motivation, in every segment really, is my brother, the original guest of the Chosen Life podcast, and now the original guest in our new location. And since the book is launched, he's the one and only George Tremis. George, welcome back to the Chosen Life.
Jonathan, thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure. It's always a good time. And you know what? Despite what's going on in my day, knowing that I get to come here and spend some time with you, my brother, it uplifts me. And I actually had to face some fantastic Toronto traffic coming from the West End, but it's all washed away now because I'm here with you. So thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Honestly, it is our pleasure, myself, the audience. And I can tell you, man, I faced that same traffic. I was up early this morning, 5:30, I had to wake up. I was at a BNI meeting this morning. I said I'd come in, and that fun drive from the West End back to Toronto, first thing in the morning on the 401, you know what? People who drive the 401 every day, they need the Bible 3.0. They need yoga, meditation, spirituality in their life. Abso-freaking-lutely. And it's those people today and the public at large, George, that I want to reach out to today, because you're going to be joining us now for a few weeks, and great to have you back.
Thank you.
The last time you and I taped, we had just launched the Bible 3.0, the book, the ebook. The audiobook was not out yet. Supposed to be out, but in the wonderful world of technology, everything else, it has to be just perfect, just right till it happens. So it goes on its own time. But we got to discuss the launch of the book, where everything was headed. And, I made a very conscientious decision, George. At 3 years of this podcast, Chosen Life podcast, and people would come to me all the time and ask me, what does this podcast mean? Where is it going? I would tell them a meaning, but the truth of the matter was I knew I had a glimpse of it, but I didn't want to decide for people what this podcast was. I wanted the audience to speak to us and tell us what they wanted, what they needed, where they needed to be as far as the podcast goes. So the idea of the Chosen Life was it's a lifestyle podcast, whether it's sports, watches, cars, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, every little segment of your life. And, the idea being, what vacations you take and what professionals you work with. You either are living the chosen life or you want to live the chosen life.
True.
But it's been very clear over 3 years, especially since the launch of the Bible 3.0, that this podcast has gone to a very specific place. And what people are asking for and what they need more George Tremis in their life. They need those professionals that worked hard, suffered, maybe fell down, stood back up, grew beyond expectation, and continue to do so. Those people that are motivated, so they're into motivation, mindfulness, and self-improvement. So the message of the Chosen Life podcast, after 3 years of doing this, after launching the book and working together in an ecosystem and organically flowing together, it's come down to, George, this podcast is all about motivation, mindfulness, self-improvement. When I tell you those words, what goes on in your head, out of curiosity?
Oh, man, I think that's bang on. How can you have the chosen life without those things? So it makes sense that it's a natural evolution. 3 years in the making, 3 years in the evolution. And I'm excited to hear about I wouldn't call it rebranding, but the evolution of the podcast, if you will. And I think it makes perfect sense, right? You have to have motivation to do things, to be disciplined, to do the things that need to be done. You have to be motivated somehow. You have to be mindful in what you do to make sure you're doing it right. And if you're doing those two things, you should be focused on self-development. Because if you're not developing, if you're not moving forward, you're actually going backwards.
I like that.
Right?
But self-improvement.
Correct. Improvement.
Yes.
Improvement.
That third part is the interesting one, because I will touch upon it again, but why I went with self-improvement, because when I was speaking with my publisher from the beginning, they wanted me to read other books, look up genres, and figure out which is the genre that this book is going to be under. And over and over and over is self-help. Self-help is where it's at. Self-help is where all the gurus are at, and there's different levels of self-help. There's spiritual self-help, there's medical self-help, whatever. There's all these categories of self-help. And I said from the beginning, I don't like the term self-help. I get that it'll be in self-help, but I don't like self-help. I like self-improvement. To me, like self-help is I'm in the middle of the ocean and I need a freaking raft just to get me back to shore. Yes, a lot of us need help, understandable, but I don't want us to focus on the need and the help and the negativity that surrounds it for me. To me, it's about self-improvement. We are here today. We've already asked for the help. I don't want to focus on the help because I'm getting the help. I want to improve. I want to move to the next level. That's why self-improvement to me is where it's at. And this is not going to focus on just helping people. You're going to get help, certainly, but you're coming in with the mindset, I'm ready to improve. So this is where I'm going to steer it to part A. It's funny. I've been marinating on this for a good 2 years, George. And it literally hit me one morning, and it came to me, those terms, and in that order. It's not like I sat there. I didn't make a project board. I didn't try to manifest it and try to rejig it and everything else. I just let myself be. And then one day it just landed in my head and it was boom. Motivation was definitely number one. If you want to live the chosen life, if you want to be the best you that you can be, to me, it begins and ends with motivation. If you don't have motivation, it ain't gonna happen. So I don't know if you have the experience. I don't know if you have the knowledge. I don't know if you have the direction. But man, you start off with motivation, I think you're ready to go places.
I 100% agree with you. So on the motivation piece, for example, I have a workshop that I deliver or have delivered many times, well received, growing in renown, and it's called Money Mountain. And it starts with, in my terms, passion, but passion is motivation. So I 100% agree with you. That's the foundation of the mountain that's climbed by people. So it's the right place to start. But I do want to touch on one thing to recognize something that you had mentioned before, because one of the things I love about being on the show with you is it always stimulates my thinking, and my thinking improves. My thinking evolves. So I did say self-development. I didn't realize it. You caught me. And before I even touch on that, you talked about self-help. I think self-help is actually evolved because there's many levels of help, right? There's do it for you, do it with you, or do it yourself. Self-help sounds like just do it yourself, right? And then if we move into the development piece, it's actually improvement. To use the analogy you had about being in the middle of the ocean and getting a raft, and that's self-help. Self-improvement is, how did you end up in the ocean in the first place? Let's avoid that happening again. So you're right. Improvement is the evolution of development. So yeah, I just wanted to call that out because you triggered that thinking. I'm like, wow, he is bang on with that.
And again, it's not a thing that I sat and had it written on a message on my wall and stared at it for days and tried to reconfigure it. It was there. It was there always in the back of my head. I was just, when I was ready to let it come out, it was there. And that's where step 2 allowed me to create that message, which is mindfulness. If I sat every single day, George, and I stressed about it, I said, I need to have the concise message of my podcast. Which is the direction of the podcast? Why can't I think of the message of the podcast? And put a lot of pressure on myself and get a lot of stress and not be able to focus. That message ain't coming. And this is where I'm letting people know, number one, we got that motivation. We found that motivation. We want to do something. We want to be about ourselves and be the best as possible. Great. We want to have our chosen life. Number 2 now, get out of your head. Now it's time to be mindful. Let go. Let go of the expectations. Let go of the worries. Just be. The fact that you are now here and you're motivated, accept that state. Don't rush to change everything tomorrow. Don't say, okay, I am ready to lose 40 pounds. I'm going to jump on Ozempic or whatever it is, and that's going to fix me quickly. I'm going to go to a boot camp for 1 week. That's going to fix me quickly. We're not going to rush. We're not going to, you spent your whole life getting to a certain point. Now to get to that next point in your life, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take another lifetime. And to get that mindset, to me, it's about mindfulness. Your thoughts on number 2?
I agree 100%, and it makes me think of a section of your book I was reading, and it was a section in which you quoted yourself as saying you were afraid of not living. That whole section about the pressures you placed on yourself, and it resonated with me. I related to it, and whether it's from upbringing and the expectations that if I got 90%, where was the other 10? There's pros and cons to everything. There's nothing absolutely good or bad. But if you don't have the mindfulness to understand that concept and apply it appropriately, you will punish yourself with it. So mindfulness is critical to the next step. So I am seeing this ladder of evolution in your 3 points for the show.
With the mindfulness aspect of it, you know, I don't, when I speak with you, George, I think you're the only guest where I literally have to write down one word for myself and that's it, because I know it's going to flow, because you bring so many good ideas out of me. When I sit with you, I look in the mirror, I see the best in me. So you actually bring the best side of me out of myself. And I try to do the same for you, obviously.
You do.
And that's where the flow is. We got the motivation. If we do not have the mindfulness, you know what I see it? The motivation is the fire, and not being mindful, being stressed, overworked, you know, anxious, depressed, all these things, they're like water and they're extinguishing the fire. The mindfulness, by having the fire and sitting by the fire and just letting the fire go, you know what's going to happen? The fire is going to spread. It's going to allow it to organically become versus self-extinguishing it. So you need to find that external motivation to bring internal motivation within yourself, but internally you could extinguish that motivation in a heartbeat. So that's where I tell people, step back for a second, notice. You got the motivation, let the motivation grow, let it thrive. And when the more you let go off the gas pedal and you just let the ride go, you'll be shocked of what you're able to come up with in the state of mindfulness, which will inevitably lead you to step 3, which is self-improvement. And self-improvement, I believe, is a category. When I walk into a bookstore, when I go on Amazon, I go on Barnes & Noble, I should be able to go to self-improvement, and there should be a whole beautiful section that should be the #1 sellers, because people should accept the fact that you decided you want to make a change. You're already asking for help. You're deciding, I don't want to do it on my own. By having self-improvement, like this book, for example, I love the way you put it, because this is not self-help. I'm not telling people you are stuck by yourself and you got to do it on your own. All the tools are here. Oh, and by the way, as you're using those tools and you're working through them on your own, you got a question, you have a comment, you have a concern. You know where to find me on social media. Reach out to me. If I reach out to Stephen King, I say, hey, Stephen King, so I'm reading The Stand and this is really bothering me. Can you please let me know your thoughts? How many responses am I going to get?
I don't think many. I really don't think many. And also, not only do you provide the tools in the book, but what you're also doing is advocating for embracing, I don't know what the right word is for it, but in a sense of community within yourself and with others. I mean, what is yoga as well, for example? It's not a solo activity. It is, but it's with others. So it's very interesting. I mean, that's what popped into my head when you were saying that.
Well, the idea of community, you decide, so when somebody makes a decision, I am motivated, I'm mindful, and I'm going to improve myself. What they're going to find all of a sudden, George, is they're going to be hanging out with different people. It's family, friends, colleagues. And some they're going to find are raising their energy, and some are deflating them. They're going to realize not everybody's on the same page as me. And some of those people you can have the conversation with, and they're like, wow, I really like where you're going with your life here. Can I join in? Others are going to come in and say, that's so silly. That doesn't make sense at all. You're just being, completely, you're living up in the clouds. This is not real life. Real life is hard. Real life sucks, and try to deflate you. But to those people, what I'm telling you, #1 is don't get upset at the negativity. Do not get upset, because those people, while they are hurting you on a certain level, I think of many times, it's not that they're trying to make your life worse. It's that they're not good within themselves. That's it. And because they're not good within themselves, they can't be good for others. So sympathize with them. Let them do their thing, but don't let them drag you down. To me, they always say you are the 10 people you're closest with, your inner circle. Be with people that grow your energy. Raise your game. People that are saying, wow, they really are great mentors. They've really gotten somewhere in life. This is where I want to be, and learn from them. If you hang out with 10 people that have all failed in life, did not get anywhere in their chosen areas, and you're saying, hey, this person's a horrible tennis player, but I'll go play tennis with them. And hey, this person did not succeed in business, but I'll go into business with them. And this person cannot get a date, but I'll help them get them to matchmake me. That doesn't make sense. I want to get matchmaked. I'm going to go with somebody who's in a happy marriage. I want to go to business with somebody. I want to see somebody that succeeded. Raise your game. Don't think so little of yourself that you have to bring yourself down. Raise yourself up, and sometimes that may mean cutting people out of the circle and bringing people into the circle.
Listen, I think that's 100%. And maybe, unfortunately, it's something that only really comes to us as we get older and wiser and a little bit more gray hair. Unfortunately, many times the younger people and the younger people listening to this, it's naturally innate in us to want to ensure at all costs almost to be part of the tribe. We're tribal people. But as we get older, we realize it's the quality of the tribe, not the size of the tribe. And unfortunately, there's going to be people listening to this podcast, maybe being a little bit judgmental about, having to be selective in who you spend your limited time with. But as they get older, they'll realize time is the most precious thing we have. Unfortunately, too many people fight for their inadequacies and fight for their shortcomings and fight for the tough life that they say they have, instead of saying, hey, if it's working for you, maybe I shouldn't fight for my current state. Maybe I should try what you're saying. Maybe I should read the book. But instead, they put so much energy into staying where they're at instead of doing the self-improvement. It's ironic to fight for something that you don't advocate for, you, that you don't want, yet you fight for it. I see it all the time, whether it's in sales training, whether it's in my let's say motivation programs and mindset programs. People want to be naysayers. It's almost like they find justification in that. And it's sad, it's unfortunate. And like you said, just feel bad. Don't be angry. Don't be upset. Just understand that you have to have your boundaries and that not everybody is on the same path as you. And if that's the ultimate destination that you set for yourself, not only may they be further back, they may be trying to go in a different direction. It's like, I wish you well. Here's some fuel for the road. And maybe I'll see you one day again. We'll come back on our path. But for me, I agree with you. And I keep it to 5. Maybe I should make it 10. But you're one of them. You're one of the 10. And being with you is uplifting. I grow, I get better, I self-improve. It challenges my thinking, and I leave energized, but mutually energized, synergistically. I don't take from you, you don't take from me, we grow together. And so those are the kind of people you should surround yourself with. Unless you want an average, mediocre, depressed life, it's your choice. That's the beauty of life. We get a choice.
Well,
a bit of a rant, but...
No. Well, and it's on that rant that we're going to pause today, because I'm going to leave everybody wanting some more, because on the things we've talked about today, we can sit here and talk abstractly. Here's some concepts in a book, here's some concepts for an author, and that's great and all. But next week, I want to touch upon already a real life success story from the Bible 3.0. This is going to blow your mind. It's going to blow everybody's mind. But we're going to wait till next week. George's time is very precious. He gave us the most precious commodity he has, which is his time. And so with his blessing, we're going to have you back next week. We're going to talk about the success story. And in the meantime, for those of you that obviously are listening to it, want to learn more, you go on Amazon, anywhere in the world. You can go on Indigo in Canada, Barnes & Noble in the States. I will be coming through a Barnes & Noble tour in the States this summer. So I may be at your local bookstore. Please feel free to come in, say hello. Would love to sign the book and share people's stories. Like, this is the one thing, George. This book, while it's part memoir, part inspirational, part self-improvement, I share my stories not for the glory of my stories, so that people can reflect within themselves and help create their own stories. And that's the most rewarding part of it. So this is where you can get the book. You reach us back, George Tremis, Jonathan A. Hacohen, and we'll see you back next week on the Chosen Life Podcast.